Hello and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk, the podcast for human skills and mindset. Before I introduce my guests, I would like to thank everyone who listening and viewing these podcasts and subscribing. So please subscribe to the YouTube channel. And also because of all the inspiration and encouragement, we have also tried to work on the Anchor. So you will now see these podcasts if you would like to listen only on the Anchor medium. And as we go along, we will keep progressing as well. So thank you so much for the encouragement so far. I'm a soldier. I fight where I'm told, and I win where I fight. George S. Patton. Today, we are very excited in conversation with Pearce Cucchissi. He was a former Army Ranger or Special Operations Combat veteran. He's also founder and CEO of Built to Evolve, specialized in advising entrepreneurs, athletes, and executives around mental, emotional, and physical optimization. Pearce, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Saurabh, it's good to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for providing your valuable time to discuss about some of the topics which is very close to my heart. So would you just give a bit introduction to our viewers and listeners about who is Pearce?
Yeah, of course. I'll do kind of the quick breakdown. Probably what most people are interested in is the military background, which is part of U.S. Army Special Operations Command as a Ranger. We're essentially a direct action raid unit. We had a leadership role there, deployed all over the Middle East, Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan. Was a, really great experience, fantastic change in perspective from, where I come from in the US, and gained incredible skills and met some incredible people. Right? And after that, I really tried to, in the transition time, I struggled a bit on where exactly I would take my career. And I started to continually recognize the need for this intersection between physical, mental, and emotional performance within essentially everybody, and found myself working with athletes to begin with, and then entrepreneurs, and then executives, and really being able to bring the knowledge from performance that I was able to gain through military training and combat, as well as resilience, which is something that I really felt like I learned afterwards and had to create for myself. So that's kind of the quick background.
That's great. So let's try to get to a flashback and start, like how you get introduced to military. Is it something happened in the past that, okay, this is something I would like to pursue, or you always have that passion and vision that this is something which I always would like to do and try to work together? So how you entered into the military?
Yeah. So to be honest, I have a younger brother, and he was always very interested in the military. I had people in past generations in my family, but when I looked at conventional military, it didn't seem to fit me. Very regimented, very in the box. Rules when I was younger weren't great. I was a bit of a more wild child. My biggest thing was freedom. I wanted to kind of be free from authority and all of that. That's a longer story. But then people say, oh, why did you go into the military if that's the case? Well, I was really searching for, one, to prove myself to myself, to push myself beyond my limits, to feel like I had earned my place kind of in life. I just felt connected to this sense of purpose in some way. And I think for a lot of people, I entered the military right after college, and I didn't really find that I found that sense of purpose within college. And really the tipping point was when I learned about people in special operations, Rangers, Navy SEALs, Green Berets, people like that. And it instantly clicked. Right. I'm seeing guys with long hair and beards jump out of planes in the middle of the night, to go take down some bad guys. And it wasn't like I want to do that. It was, that's me. I already felt at home. It was like the path at that time was already decided. All I had to do was put it into action. Putting it into action was very difficult. Mentally, I didn't have any role models. I didn't know anybody who had done this. It didn't seem like, from where I came from in my high school or my college, nobody else was doing it. It almost seemed like a fairy tale. So I really had to go out, and I was extremely fortunate that some former special operators were willing to talk to me when I reached out on the internet or from their book or anything like that. So I try to pay that forward now, and I do some mentorship with younger guys that are looking to go into that field.
That's great. So help us understand, for people who may not know much about military, when you talk about special operations or Army ranges, what in a common man's language, like if you want to explain them, what exactly you did at that point in time?
Got it. So essentially in the common or the current battle space, unless you're in a special operations unit, you're really not doing any action on the ground. Now I'm speaking for the last 8 years or so, which is, especially in combat areas such as the Middle East. What we did specifically, and what the Ranger Regiment specializes in, is finding high value targets, which means people of importance to the United States, and doing direct action missions on them, which direct action essentially means going for their place, where they live or wherever they are out in that country, and kill or capture missions. And so that could be done by land, by boat, by air, almost always done in the middle of the night. Relatively dangerous missions done in small teams, oftentimes with very little backup, depending on where we are. But that's really the sole focus of my unit and what I did.
Okay. So one thing which always intrigued me is how the Army people, military, or the defense personnel really have so much of passion for their country, for their countrymen, that they can even put their life in front to defend that. So how that passion built up, because as you mentioned that at that particular point in time, you were not even kind of envisioning to go to the military, and then things unfolds and you get into that. So what's your perspective about having that level of passion in the military?
Yeah. So looking back on it, I'm recognizing now, when I kind of look at basic human needs, belonging, acceptance, a tribe is really, really important for people. It's almost programmed into our DNA. Like if we look back at evolutionary times, if you were not accepted by a tribe, you were essentially in grave danger, right? You could not really survive out on your own. You needed the tribe. So I think that was part of kind of the internal need to be around certain types of people, or feel like I've really made a difference or made my mark within the country. Right. So I think just through seeing the stories, I grew up right next to New York City, around the time of 9/11. And there were, I always heard stories of people out there, fighting and being able to help people. I think I also always internally had this personality of the protector, wanted to always protect other people. So I think it initially started with this kind of big patriotism, but when it came to it, when we were actually over in the Middle East and you're so disconnected from the United States and nobody has any idea what we're doing over there, most people are like, oh, there's still fighting going on in the Middle East. It really came down to just helping people that couldn't help themselves. I really was able to be in areas that were pretty wild in what people can do to other people. So it gave myself and my teammates great fulfillment to help those people. And then the next step down is just, once you're there with your team, that's where the real allegiance lives. And you're there to do a certain job. And the bond between members of the team gets incredibly strong. And that's kind of where we really find our tribe and acceptance within the tribe.
Yes, that's so true. I mean, the men who are really looking forward with the a very focused approach and passion and in a coordinated effort, that definitely yields the results and the experience which you get. It's, I think, as a civilian, you may not be able to get those kind of experiences. And you mentioned that you've been to Afghanistan and Syria. And I think those experiences would be something, even with when you speak, you may not be able to give justice about what you have experienced or kind of maybe see over there, which we can only see from the television.
Yeah, it was, I wish everybody could have that experience. Maybe not in the way that I did it, but just to be able to see a place like that, right? It doesn't really matter what economic status you grew up with, in the US, there's always opportunity, and we really have a lot. When I was able to go over there and I saw kids happy, joyful, playing, and the only thing they had to play with was a rock, and they would go back to their mud hut in 120 degrees, that was a real perspective shift for me on, what truly creates happiness, what truly creates fulfillment, right? Or seeing people smiling and waving back at us when they're literally rebuilding their city in Syria, like bending the rebar back to try to get it straight. So having that shift is now a constant reminder for me every day, right? Anytime there's a low day, or I live in Los Angeles, so in terms of what we consider success, there's a lot of comparison. I have to remind myself of truly how lucky I am, and I don't think I know that I didn't have that when I was younger, and that's no fault of mine because my perspective didn't allow for it. So I think it's a really important thing for people that are, especially young people or really at any age, that we encourage others to go and do that, whether it's traveling or doing charity or building houses somewhere or the military. It can really be a massive add and benefit to our lives to be able to get this full spectrum perspective.
That's so true. I think that's what a lot of people mention, that if you really want to understand life, you have to really travel through the world and see that sometimes you feel that you are so privileged in terms of, and then when you try to feel low, as you rightly mentioned, then you think about what maybe other part of the world people may not have, and what you are trying to lament of the fact that you may not have X, Y, or Z things. So that's so true. I think a lot of people in your space have so much beautiful perspective about that. So let's change gear about your organization which you have created. So when you start working on, I think the Build to Evolve, if I right, that's the name of your company. Yep. Yeah. So. Correct. How did transition happen? You started off mentioning that from the defense to the civilian mode. I've heard a lot of stories that sometimes people cannot adjust throughout their life. How that transition happened? And then in that transition, how this company was kind of born?
Yeah, so I got out at an interesting time. I pretty much went directly from Afghanistan back to regular life. And this was only about a month before all the COVID lockdowns happened. So what I've seen with my population is that within a 2-year period in general, from when they exit the military, there is some sort of area of decline, right? Doesn't matter how good their job is or their education, or there's always some area of issue. Now I look back on, I feel like I was fortunate that I got that realization relatively quickly because of COVID, right? I took a job in tech, and I was kind of locked in my apartment in Los Angeles, and really made me, rethink everything I did. There's the issues that I see right now really just come from essentially being in an area of chronic stress for very long periods of time. And we kind of do that to ourselves in the military, and it's very encouraged, right? You get promoted and you do really well based on, how you can be kind of that pedal to the floor, full throttle all the time. That doesn't work over the long term. And that's where we see, kind of the decline of a lot of people. And that's not just within the military, that can be within sports, or I see it with a lot of people in the corporate world as well. So really how it started was, I just started to get asked. I would talk to people and started to get asked to help out, right? One was with a sports psychologist working with some collegiate and professional athletes. Another with a very high performing coach who works with some athletes in the NFL and UFC. I worked alongside a neurologist for a period of time, and I started to realize, hey, everything that I had learned and everything that I've been learning about myself during this transition can really help other people. And it initially just started, not as a business, just doing it for free, just because I liked talking about it, just because talking about it made me have to live up to the things that I was talking about, right? I couldn't be a hypocrite when we talk about mindfulness and state control and all of these things. I had to really live that if I was going to be teaching it to other people. So from there, once I saw the need, once I saw that I was passionate in this area, that's when I really said, same with the military, right? If there's a time to test this out, it's now. So I might as well give it a shot. And then from there, I can, it snowballed into the clientele and companies that I work with now.
That's great. I think it shows that you realize that people are reaching out to you for certain things, and they're looking forward to get those expertise, which help you to self-reflect that let's try to further hone those skills. And you reached out to different experts in order to understand more in depth and then try to create a structure. So where is your organization at this point? You have clienteles. How is it doing? And what are the key mission statement or vision you have for your organization?
Yeah, so we're still relatively young. Right now in the last, 6 to 8 months or so to a year, it's been a lot of one-on-one with people, with entrepreneurs and executives. We're starting to flow into the corporate space and working with teams. And then an eventual goal, which I'm working on as well, is being able to provide this knowledge to everybody, right? I don't see this as necessarily just the business. It's also helping the world. We have such an issue, especially in the US, with physical and mental health, right? And I constantly see it, even with people that, are extremely high performers, right? I'm really trying to get down to this internal satisfaction, right? So we're not always fighting ourselves. We're not always up against resistance, right? Somewhere that I found myself many times. So the eventual goal with this company is that I can have an impact on everybody as they come up through school, through college, in their young careers, work with teams in companies or within sports of all different levels, as well as with the executives, right? So I believe in this like top-down, bottom-up approach where we can get to everybody. I think the biggest piece there is affecting the culture. Right? Within the military, the culture did not allow for any sense of vulnerability. People did not want to talk about issues at all, especially when it came to mental or certain health things, right? If we had a knee injury, we had no problem saying, hey, I need to go get this looked at, do a little physical therapy, and I'll be back, no problem. But anything else with the mind, right, which is really where the majority of our human issues come up, and the issues are also similar between people, everybody shied away from it. And unfortunately, that was what led to people breaking, right? So I think of it as I was in a world where everybody was extremely, extremely tough. Right? You can think about a ball made out of rock or diamond. They're extremely tough, but under a certain amount of pressure, the rock or the diamond will eventually break, will eventually crack. So my goal with what I'm doing is basically to turn everybody into a lacrosse ball, right? Or for those that might not know what that is, a tennis ball. It does not matter how hard you hit that ball or what you hit it at, it will always bounce right back, right? And that's the difference between toughness and resilience. Resilience is what helps us throughout the long run. right? Toughness helps us in the moment, and it's great and it's fantastic, but you have to learn the resilience part or else everybody will break, right? And there always comes that breaking point. And if it hasn't happened to most people now, we need to look into the future to try to anticipate those things. So that's really my goal, is just to improve the lives, to improve the performance, the satisfaction, and business of everybody. So at the young stage right now, we're kind of in that middle, still working with very small teams or one-on-one and, building that plan to spread.
Great. I love the analogy you mentioned about the rock, diamond, and ball. It's so true. As I think it's not even only restricted to the army or defense personnel. It's also related to the common man, civilians who have different sort of stress and different kind of pressures in their life, and how they become more resilient, because you cannot control how life throws the things at you. You just have to control how you respond to that. So you have to see whether you have to react for everything or you have to start responding with having more self-awareness and just taking a pause and see that, what am I doing? So those things are so important. So is your all the consulting and your coaching is mostly towards the people who are retiring from the defense side of the house, or you are also at this point leveraging your expertise on the entrepreneurs or people who are in a high stressful environment?
Yeah, it's pretty much completely on the entrepreneurs in high stress environment. I do some work with veterans as well, and there's some incredible organizations that help them with transition. And hopefully I'll be able to get into that even more with some of the ones that helped me greatly. But right now, in terms of the business, it's all with executives, with entrepreneurs, with high performing teams, people that also deal with stress, deal with decision making under high amounts of risk. Because really, the issues there, like I said, they're not military issues. They're human issues. Everybody has them. I like to not create this level of separation. Like, what I did does not make me any different from you. It's only an experience that I had. Right? So how do I take that experience to help other people? So you can really think of it as, if anybody is in a profession where they have to make decisions under risk, there's a level of overworking or burnout, there's a high amount of stress, there's an issues with lack of time, communication, interpersonally, people don't feel the way they want to every day. That hinders their performance, right? That's what we go after. Any type of stress really takes us out of the space where we can perform optimally. And the problem is, some people, like myself, get addicted to it. And we think that's our baseline, right? So now we're operating from this place that's maybe at 70% of our capacity, but we think it's normal. So part of what I do is that awareness and starting to build that so we can get back to 100%.
Cool. So the people who are viewing or listening to this podcast, what do they expect the value out of the coaching? So do you have any kind of high level framework, how, when the people approach you for coaching and guidance, what are the things you generally do so that they know that this is how the framework looks like on a high level?
Yeah, so from a high level, we'll work on a certain frequency. This could be weekly, it could be monthly. And essentially, it's pretty simple. Right? It's not easy, but it's simple. We get very clear identification of goals, how we want to act, feel, react, perform. And then we start digging and asking detailed questions on what are the limitations. Those can be external limitations or most likely internal limitations. Just issues that are going on, mental, emotional issues. We could have anxiety, stress, issues with judgment, communication, frustration, and any of these things that are blocking us from feeling and performing the way that we want. When we get those clearly identified, we start to work in some pieces. Well, I'll call that homework, right? There are specific tools and tactics based on things like physiology, psychology, nervous system regulation, all relatively simple. And we come up with a plan and start to tweak that plan over and over and over again. And we analyze how the weeks or months have been going based on that initial gathering of data. that we did with the goals and limitations. And slowly what people find is they start to really change in the way they feel. Their goals start, they start really enacting how they want to be, that perfect projection of themselves. They don't find themselves with mood swings at all. They're much more able to communicate. Their energy is better. It stays much more flat instead of these big swings. And all of those things, depending on what position you're in, could reproduce massive gains on a business side or just in life in general.
Great. I think, that looks a pretty neat framework to get started. So now we are moving towards the part of some advice to the people who are looking at this podcast while they are trying to still juggle around. As you mentioned, that there are a lot of things related to the external factor, the way how you respond to that. The other thing is about overall the neuroscience associated with this. So what's your advice to the people who are struggling in terms of stressful environment, in terms of grappling or making some sense to the situation, overall mental health for those people who are really working out with that, and also the people who see other people having those challenges of mental health issues?
Awesome. And I apologize, Sarabi, I cut out for a moment. What was the initial question?
Sure. So the question is what are the advice to you for the people who would like to get started? First of all, try to be more self-aware and
of course,
understand those stressful environment, understand what are the key steps they would like to take based on your opinion. And
got it.
Not only them, also for those people who they see, because it's not always about yourself. Sometimes the people who maybe in your family, your colleagues or friends, you see that there is some mental health related challenges. So what would be the advice for them? So there's a two-part of the question here.
Got it. So the biggest key is first awareness. Most of us live in this area where we're completely unconscious to what's going on inside of us, right? We haven't been able to create any distinction between the real us and the part of us that is reacting based on survival. The biggest thing to anybody that's starting to recognize, hey, maybe I need to look into this process, is just to become as aware as possible. At the end of each day or throughout the day, take notes on what changed your state. What I mean by that is what made you really happy? What made you angry, frustrated? What made you quick to react? What made you have feelings of anxiety? What triggered your mind to go off and wander somewhere else where you needed to be focused on a conversation? That's the biggest piece, right? And where this gets masterful is then we dilute it down to how pinpointed can you get on that awareness? How can you start to notice really little things? If we can do that, then we have a place where we can start to work and keep you in the space where you're feeling good all the time. And that's the biggest goal.
Great. So that is the part one of the question. Part two is if you see people who are facing those challenges of mental health, stress, and all the things which comes within that, what would be your advice to those people?
That part's difficult, right? Because you can't help people with things that they cannot see. So I never try to force this process onto anybody. I may just ask some of the right questions. So if you know somebody that may be struggling with things like this, high stress, burnout, anxiety, or just is looking for more performance, just continue to ask the questions why. If they come up with a complaint or a frustration, just continually dig, continually ask the question why, almost like a little kid does to their parents. And usually that helps trigger kind of like a light bulb in their brain to say, oh, maybe this is something I need to look into, right? And if you're somebody that's doing this optimization process, you can kind of mention to them how it's working for you, but we really can't force people, unfortunately.
Yes, that's so true. You can guide people and ask right questions, being curious, and let them decide some of the path from there. That's so true. I think that being said, it was a fantastic conversation, Pearce, with you. Any parting note in terms of how people, how people can reach out to you, and what do you expect from the people to get started, so that they know that, okay, once I reach out to Pearce, these are the things I should be taking care of.
Of course. So the easiest way is you can email me or jump on my website landing page and contact me through there. It's operationevolve.com or Pearce, Pearce at built2evolve.com, which I'm sure will be in the show notes.
Yes.
Really just contact me and tell me that you're interested in having a chat. We can have an introductory chat. The biggest things, right, to start getting aware of, again, is what are the goals? Where do you want to go? And what's hindering you right now? And then we can start to dig.
Wonderful. And as Pearce mentioned, for everyone, all the information would be below in the show notes so that you can reach out to Pearce. Thanks again, Pearce, for all the time which you have provided. It was a lovely conversation. All the best for your company. You guys are doing an amazing job bringing change to people's life. So I'm really looking forward for your organization to just grow leaps and bounds.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And it was a great opportunity to chat with you.